So let me welcome you all at the final panel, and now it has a very peculiar role that has to do with technology and AI. That is the main axis of our technological infrastructure. And what we will discuss today is this entire issue that has to do with AI, of digital transformation, generally speaking. And this entire agri-food chain, which is not actually very far away, it's right next to us. It is reshaping our lives now. And of course, along with me, Mr. Panayotopoulos is another moderator, CFS lead from Bayer Crop Science Division. Now, we're not just talking about a collection of more data, but imagine I had lived through this a few days ago when I was in Barcelona, the biggest technological exposition that has to do with cell phone technology. We saw some things that were of a completely different dimension. AI, as strong as it seems now, imagine that we have years to come. We're expecting quantum computers that work in a different dimension than the typical binary system that we all know. Imagine that the computers that we saw in Barcelona had an amazing computative power. So things are completely different right now than the ones that we are used to right now. The systems of moderate warning and the prognostic models will help us. I won't waste any more of your time. I will pass the microphone to my friend and moderator. Hello, Panos. Thank you for inviting me, and I would also like to welcome participants at the panel. And it's an amazing opportunity to discuss with you about AI and how it will help us secure food security. We also had Professor Bloomberg from the Ben Gurion University, but he couldn't come because his flight was cancelled. And I will connect this to the previous panel because we heard a lot of interesting things from our ambassadors regarding geopolitical security and the important value of food. Now, a lot of things are happening at the same time in this decade. Climate change, climate crisis. There are signs of climate crisis. Geopolitical instability is something that we are going through, unfortunately. And of course, the rapid technological evolution. We see that new technologies, new innovations are spreading, even in the agro-food sector. We're talking about digital transformation, we're talking about the productivity of agricultural production. But from what we can see now, it's not just about the production when it comes to digital transformation, but having this capability to manage data and incorporate digital technologies. It's not just a matter of performance, but a matter of strategic competence of each state, of each institution, and national resilience, I would say, and also a form of geopolitical superiority. We talk about algorithms, data, digital infrastructure, and it seems that they have an equal importance as water, resources, the ground. These are assets now. Data is an asset. And of course, we understand that this entire strategic importance can be a bit problematic for us. It can make us worry. How can we use all those data, all this power? How can we use them in order to have an opportunity and also a challenge for possible problems in the field of agriculture? So we're talking about digital sovereignty, having the opportunity as a state to manage your data. We have a lot of distinguished guests here, and we're going to have the honor to hear them discuss and talk about empowering democratic values when it comes to the sustainability through digital technologies. Now, the floor to Panos. Now, let me present the panel. First of all, in my left, we have Dr. Spyridon Flogaitis, Director General of the European Public Law Organization, who will talk about food security and focus on legal aspects of data protection and cybersecurity. We have Dr. Pantelis Lappas, AI Solutions Architect for Netcompany and Adjunct Professor of Business Research, regarding the improvement of supply chain. We have Dr. Nikolaos Thomaidis, Professor and the VP of the Administrative Council for the National Kapodistrian University of Athens, with a deep knowledge of analytical methods, traceability, and food safety. Dr. Konstantinos Demestichas is an assistant professor at the Agricultural Economics and Rural Development Department of the University of Athens, who is going to talk about the use of AI in AgriFood AI Data Hub. We have Mr. Fotis Chatzipapadopoulos, a CEO for Smart Agro Hub, on the front lines of digital agriculture by following the digital transformation of the producers through the new platform Agro and other smart tools like this one. You all know very well, as we have discussed, we're going to have 3 rounds of questions. The first round will be 6 to 7 minutes, and then we have 3 minutes for each round. And at the end, if there's enough time, we're going to have a short Q&A session. So let us begin. We're going to start with the first round, the digital transformation. Dr. Konstantinos Demestichas. The first question is the following. The true value of AI is not just the production of data, but the utilization of those data to knowledge, actionable intelligence, as we call them. AgriFood AI Data Hub at the Agricultural University of Athens, how will they manage to put in practice this connection of data and also the farmers' data? Mr. Demestichas, thank you for your invitation. I'd like to thank the organizers as well. When it comes to agriculture today, we are surrounded by data. Satellites, drones over the fields, sensors on the ground, meteorological models, digital platforms. But the future of agriculture does not is not based on the data that we collect, but how smart can we use this data? The agri-food sector is now entering through a new phase of digital transformation. For years we have been talking about drones, sensors, smart tools, but the true change is happening in our capability to turn this data into knowledge. And this is where AI comes into play, to combine these different sources of information and produce useful conclusions. And this doesn't only have to do with productivity, but it has to do with durability of the agro-food system. Agriculture, as we all know and we have analyzed in the previous panels, is working under extreme uncertainty. The climate uncertainty is increasing, extreme weather phenomena, and the geopolitical tensions are affecting the markets and the supply chain. And in this environment, AI allows us to move forward to a more prognostic agriculture, meaning locating the dangers before they become problems. This is already happening in our own research. We are developing models that combine satellite data and environmental data in order to anticipate the severity of forest fires before they even happen. And those models locate regions of high risk. And under the same logic, in the agricultural sector, we can predict stress on the ground or on the agriculture. Of course, there is also a challenge here that has to do with data themselves. Agricultural data are more often than not external. They also include the noise, data noise, or incompatibilities. And even when we have relatively simple sources, such as a camera, for example, or a sensor, all those data need to be graded, harmonized, before they can be used to analytical models. So in order for this AI to use the data, they should be AI ready, meaning well-structured data, functional and trustworthy. But this leads us to a further challenge, and it doesn't only have to do with the collection of more data, but also about the creation of dependable ecosystems of farmers' data. These types of ecosystems should allow farmers, researchers, businesses, public institutions, policymakers to exchange data in ways that make them create value. And at the same time, they secure safety, security, and privacy of data. So data governance is very important because it creates trust. Now, at a European level, we see initiatives that try to free the value of data through digital infrastructure, and such as DJust Connect from Belgium. This initiative will facilitate safe exchange of data in the agri-food sector. So by taking inspiration through these types of initiatives, the Agricultural University of Athens has already started creating this agri-food data hub for the support of data exchange and analysis through AI in the agri-food chain. Of course, the digital transformation doesn't only have to do with technology, but also with the creation of an ecosystem on which data, knowledge, and collaboration are linked all together. In order to do that, we need three pieces of information: AI-ready data, trustworthy data ecosystems, such as AgriFood AI Data Hub, and three, prognostic experience, meaning analytical capabilities that allow us to have better decisions, better predictions. So lastly, the success of digital agriculture is not judged by the volume of data, but on how we can turn this data into knowledge so that we can make better decisions. And if we manage to succeed that, AI will make agriculture more efficient, but also more resilient, and form a system that will be capable to answer the challenges of an uncertain world. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Let's go to Dr. Pantelis. Zaba. Excuse me. Predictive analytics and early warning systems for the detection of risks such as fraud or contamination. Is it easy to integrate such AA solutions and cooperative dashboards in the everyday life of the supply chain? Hello, it is a great pleasure to be here with you today. I will agree with Mr. Demestichas that digital transformation is not so much relevant to technology itself, but the way in which we transform data into decision-making systems. Because at the end of the day, you need to make a decision based on data. So the key competitive edge will arise from the way you've processed the data, from the way with which you've identified the patterns, and on how you will group this knowledge and integrate it into a system that will not replace people, but it will help them make better decisions. So digital transformation, in my opinion, is about data transformation into decision-making systems. Especially today in the agri-food sector, especially given the geopolitical context, the geopolitical chaos, to be honest, data are strategic resources. In previous speeches, many speakers mentioned that food is a strategic resource, but now, in order to better manage your supply chain, for example, the transport of products or technologies used to ensure the safety of these programs, then this means that the data you will base yourself upon are a strategic resource. There are many challenges and opportunities at the same time. On the one hand, we want to utilize data as best as possible in order to develop decision-making systems, early warning systems, systems that include descriptive statistics, AI prognostics. But at the same time, due to the strategic significance of this data is vulnerable. So on their own, they might need a system to secure them. Right now, in the literature, there is a tendency to use machine learning in an adversarial environment. So practically, what happens? You have data, you've been using them to train algorithms, and these algorithms are used to help you make decisions. So there are two phases. The first phase is to use this data to train algorithms, and the second phase is to get these algorithms and use them in practice. There are many well-intended people in this area, figuratively speaking, that they can tamper with your data when you train your algorithm. So if this data is contaminated, then this algorithm won't be that good. It would be giving you false conclusions. But if you filter the data in the right way and then it can help you make a good decision. I will give you a specific example of a system that will help you understand whether a supplier or a vendor is a good or bad vendor. If you tamper with the data, then good vendors might be recognized as bad ones and vice versa. So there are many risks entailed in this process. So on the one hand, early warning systems, and let me give you an example. Netcompany participates through a research program called Alliance, which is about to be concluded. Our aim was to detect fraud in supply chain. So we mainly focused on products with a protected designation of origin, PDO products, such as feta cheese. So there are fake news in the agri-food sector as well. Yes, it's interesting. This research project is a best practice that uses predictive analytics, early warning systems, and decision support systems. So the objective was the following. The food supply chain transports certain products. These products go through many stages and phases. There are various roles in the supply chain, starting from the first stages, where you will get the milk, for example, from various suppliers. It will be mixed, it will go into containers, it will go to the manufacturing site to manufacture, to produce feta cheese. So there might be someone, you might check the pH values of the milk in order to check whether the right milk has been used. Somebody might give you cow milk, which is not accepted for feta cheese. So you will find out about this through these checks. At the second stage, we use different data from sensors, from the trucks that move the products, and we can help with predictive analytics systems. And this is where optimization comes into place, because you use these systems for early warnings. But if you know that human resources will be used in your chemistry and you will spend such time, then you can be better prepared. If you know that you will have to use X number of people for X number of hours in X manufacturing site. So there is a need for early warning at various levels. Thank you for this very interesting approach. There will be a follow-up question in the next round of questions. Now let's go to Dr. Nikolaos Thomaidis. Based on your scientific know-how in analytic chemistry and traceability, how can big data and modern analytics be used in a combined manner to ensure authenticity of food and make sure that we have this farm-to-fork strategy? I would like to thank dear Mr. Balakakis and Thomas for the invitation. Based on what's been mentioned so far, digital transformation changes completely the way in which agri-food systems evolve. And not only in the production phase, as already mentioned, but also in the transport phase, the standardization phase, and at the same time it is relevant directly to consumers. And we need to take into account consumers. One must say that Europe is a region that suffers from cases of fraud in products that are important for us, such as honey, feta cheese, wine. the European Union annually has been losing tens of billions due to these fraud cases, mainly in olive oil and other fats. And Greece ranks amongst the top 5 countries with such phenomena. And the number 1 country is the Netherlands, because it is a hub for the trade of agricultural products. So there is a huge need to protect the agri-food supply chain and protect consumers, because that's the added value of this effort. Digital transformation does not only help merchants and consumers alike. So that's the only way to ensure authenticity of products. And we have to protect consumers. When we give them a piece of information through the label of the product, we have to make sure that there is traceability and that this information is true. So in this effort, of course, science, but not only data science, and analytics, chemical data science, or DNA science have to be combined with the metadata of the production, transport, storage, and manufacturing process. So, and is there traceability throughout these stages? Yes, clearly there is. So, having said that, in this supply chain, we need chemical analysis, detailed chemical analysis that will create a digital passport, let's call it, for each particular good. And this will be combined with the metadata of the manufacturing process. The pH value is not enough, especially with feta cheese. It is very easy to tamper with the logistics, and it's very easy to adulterate this product. And the only way to detect that is through very specialized techniques. We need in situ tools to make sure that there is no such case of fraud, and that's a first screening step. Screening will have to take the sample back to a lab, which will use other techniques to verify the result. So the European Commission has acknowledged this problem. We've been trying for many years to promote a different approach. So we need this fingerprint for products. What percent? We need the collection of the entire set of metadata. So we need a database with various data that we will then use machine learning to develop the right systems that will be used in situ to perform the right checks. This is what we've been trying to do. The European Commission prepared a piece of legislation in 2017 for a European Center of Authenticity that has been established, but they go rather slowly. In our research labs, we move much faster. So what's stopping us from using the methods that you've been using in your research labs? Well, let me explain. So at the European level, we are talking about checks throughout the entire supply chain. There should be a European reference center and national reference centers. This is why we need to establish a national authenticity center, which should have the digital database from reliable metadata and reliable analytic data, and at the same time have the necessary resources to perform these checks using such techniques. It's a bit complicated. Yes, it takes time. It has been our proposal to the Greek government. We have been proposing this since 2015. We established Track for Value, a startup company that does precisely that. It is under the auspices of the National and Kapodistrian University of Athens. So we combine all this data into a model to create a digital passport for the goods. Let's go now to Mr. Spyridon Flogaitis, who represents the European Public Law Organization. Can you please tell us, is the legal framework ready to adjust to this digitization of the primary sector as described by previous speakers?
Thank you for the question, and I would like to thank the organizers for inviting me, of course, especially Mr. Panagiotis, that included me in this panel. And as I was coming here, I was really thinking that our listeners will think that why should I be here in this discussion regarding agriculture? Because I am in the public law department, and when I was studying law in 1968, my first year at the university, a good student should go to the polytechnic school. The law school was a curse, actually, because we didn't have the economy in the country that could cover so many lawyers that would finally get their diploma. And at the first year, we had a professor who gave us an answer to that. He said, the professor said that these days it seems more important to build something, but remember, for those things to exist, there should be a law science, a science of the law that organizes the society. This is why we found a reason to exist, lawmakers. And now to come back to your question, we need a lot of legal work in order to secure the quality of the food chain. And we need a lot of work, mostly because there is no world legal order. Cybersecurity and cybercrime are worldwide crimes. But the answer to those crimes, cybersecurity and cyber crimes, has to do with each state separately, and we have, I think, 195 states. When we talk about 195 states, it's not just Greece, Germany, France, Egypt. We're talking about Vanuatu Islands, Nauru. But they do exist. I think the official states are 213. I thought they were less than 200, but anyway. In any case, there are very small states, And crime can always find a way, not in Berlin, but in Nauru, for example, which is an island that has 10,000 residents. And everybody wants to live. Lost in the Pacific Ocean. But this doesn't mean that Nauru would like to be part of the cybercrime world. So we have a fragmented legal effort in order to support all those things that were discussed before. This fragmentation is a problem for the national community, and they are trying to surpass that by introducing international organizations, such as the International Organization of Telecommunications or the United Nations, but also regionally, such as the European Union, which has a rather developed legal system, maybe even the most developed regional legal system in the world. And today, we do not have the answers that cover the problems in their international dimension in an organized way. And now, as Professor Thomaidis said, there's no way to deal with them efficiently, because the efforts of the United Nations, for example, for the creation of an international database is underway. There is a dialogue going on with institutions of the private sector. And we should also remember that when there is an international agreement, as we're talking about the United Nations, for example, at any level, such as the International Organization of Telecommunications, for example, this doesn't mean that this agreement will be put into force the next day immediately, because each state has different law procedures. For example, in our country, it needs to be ratified by the parliament, and then we should also get permission from the European instruments, meaning that it takes a lot of time. And we are lagging behind the reality. And as we said, AI is moving in very fast rhythms. It's practically galloping ahead, and we are running behind to catch up. Now, when it comes to cybersecurity, now that we're talking about, the European Committee is preparing a regulation that is under public discussion now in order to deal with these types of problems. Therefore, the AI Act, you're talking about that. And the general director of this AI Act is a Greek scientist, an amazing scientist. She used to be one of my old students, actually. A PhD candidate at the Cambridge University. Anyways, what I want to say is that the problems that we are facing should be dealt with necessarily by the law, the legal science, and the legal organization of each country and the international society. But technology is running ahead, and we are trying to catch up, actually. And let me close by saying that yesterday in Vienna, there was the Global Summit 2026 of the UN. It has a unit called United Nations Office for Drugs and Crime. And the object was cybersecurity. More than 500 participants were in this conference, this General Assembly, and about 80% were representatives of the private sector, private economy. I don't think that the states represented more than 20%. EPLO was there because we have a great tradition when it comes to data protection and anti-fraud and anti-corruption. And we're also permanent observers at the General Assembly of the UN. So our office was there, and we made an intervention also. Along with other international organizations for dealing with those issues. So I will finish by saying that it's a pleasure to be here, but I'm mostly here to learn and not just talk. The international community is trying to deal with these issues, but let me remind you that because technology is running ahead, the international community should run as well. But right now, it cannot. Generally speaking, the European Union does have some issues to solve because it's moving really slowly. I wouldn't say when it comes to America, for example, but with other countries of the Western world, due to the regulations that we have. And instead of helping, sometimes these regulations make things harder. But remember that the European Union is one of the strongest economies in the world. But politically speaking, it's not one of the strongest presences in the world. Thank you. Those are very interesting, of course, information. And this panel is...
Να περάσουμε στο...
Let's now go to the private sector, to the CEO of Smart Agro Hub, Mr. Fotis Chatzipapadopoulos. You are in direct contact with the practical implementation of digital agriculture. What's the opinion of farmers when it comes to your digital platform, and what's the largest obstacle for the adoption of such technologies in Greece? Good afternoon. Let me talk a little bit about Smart Agro Hub. It is indeed a private company, but it is also a startup of the Agricultural University of Athens. And the Agricultural University is an institutional investor. So even though we are a private company, it is actually a joint venture between the university and private bodies. Our objective is indeed the practical implementation of digital agriculture, and our relationship with the university allows us to have access to research results, but also we are in contact with the market in order to see how they can translate into the everyday life of the agricultural world. First of all, thank you for the invitation to participate in this conference. I've heard a lot of interesting comments today on the agri-food sector, given particularly the geopolitical disruptions. And I really like the fact that I'm the last one to speak, because I will try to build on what already said. Digital technology touches upon the agri-food sector in two ways. The first way is horizontal in the in the value chain. And Mr. Lappas and Mr. Thomaidis did in fact talk about the tech characteristics and how it can optimize the value chain. This is very important, and this is where new technologies can play a key role. The other way is primary production. So the work in the field or in livestock farms, there is the need for optimization of efficiency, as it was mentioned in the previous discussion by Mr. Fotis. But let me stress that when we talk about efficiency, it depends on what we need to optimize exactly. So far, the technologies used in the agricultural sector mainly optimized the outcome, the economic efficiency. But due to the climate crisis, and due to the waste of natural resources, now there is another important priority: efficiency when using natural resources, and we're not doing all that well in this respect. So there's still a lot of room for improvement. The good thing about the latest technological revolution is that, contrary to the chemical industry revolution that could increase productivity to the detriment of the environment, now IT technology can do both at the same time, but there is a condition. It needs to be implemented. Having available tech tools that are not involved in the everyday life, in the everyday decision making, is not fruitful at all. We do have the tools in place, but they have not been as widely accepted and adopted as we would like. If they were to be adopted, we would be more environmentally efficient, but at the same time, there is a but, which says that decision makers and and farmers and agronomists want first to increase their economic efficiency. So environmental efficiency is not their priority. So if we optimize the agri-food supply chain, we might have both. Right now, farmers are the weak link in this chain. We've heard the example in the morning panels about the pepper from Florina that is sold very cheap in the field and very expensive in the supermarket. And this product does not undergo any kind of processing. So 99% of this profit goes to the strong links in this chain. Yes, but how are we going to solve this problem? This is a very complex and difficult to handle issue. First of all, we need traceability, and it's difficult to achieve traceability. And we've been using technology in this respect, but also let's take a look at policymakers. Since the tools are available, why don't we ensure traceability, fairly redistribute the value? That's a very big topic. We could have an entire conference dedicated to it. Now, let's talk about our effort when it comes to our child, the Smart Agro Hub. We're focusing in the primary sector, in the productive process in the field, in the farm. Technology offers many opportunities, but they need to be adopted by farmers. We started in exploring the specificities and particularities of Greek agriculture. Agriculture, contrary to other sectors, has the particularity of local character. So technologies developed in the US, in Israel, in Northern Europe can partially be implemented in the Mediterranean or in the Southern Europe, or even in the same country in different areas. There always need to be adjusted algorithms, tools need to be adjusted based on the local context, on the local circumstances. And if this is combined with the geopolitical factors, so we are all more reserved and more prone to self-sufficiency, then we need to see how we can use technology and how we can generate technology at the local level instead of adjusting it, instead of localizing it. Let me give you the example of Israel. They have a really nice technology for the use of water, but why has not been widely adopted? It needs this localization. China is involved in this process, but where I would like to focus is that tech tools, each state, each union of states, each local community shouldn't just copy the tools, but adjust it to their own needs. We need a tailor-made approach at the local levels. So we need to develop technology related to agricultural production. So we've taken two initiatives to help in this direction. The first technology is related to data. Data are very important, and it is ever more important to be locally linked. So we've established the first experimental smart agriculture unit in Greece, and we are trying to create a network of such units, not only in the Greek territory, but throughout the Mediterranean. We are also part of a Mediterranean project in combination with countries of the Eastern Mediterranean in order to establish such a network. Secondly, we've developed a digital platform, a bit different from the hundreds one that exists in Greece and throughout the world. Our platform involves the cooperation of people that work in the field, businesses, agronomists, farmers, together with smart agricultural tools. Instead of verticalizing the process, we group them and we choose the solutions that can be adjusted to the Greek context. It's the platform you mentioned in your question. This platform was launched in Agrotica, and it's now available in the market. And when it comes to its acceptance by Greek farmers, well, let me tell you, as it is the case with all types of innovation, you never expect a fully innovative product to be fully adopted by the entire market. No, this is very difficult. But it suffices to have a percentage of people, innovative people, that will show the way, that will act as example. Thank you, Mr. Chatzipapadopoulos. We will go to the second round of questions. I will give the floor to Manolis to continue. I've known Fotis Chatzipapadopoulos for many years. And I've known the good work he has been doing, and we've all understood the significance of data. So we've talked a lot about the importance of data in this first round of questions, but we need to link it to the geopolitical environment and our concerns. So our concern is whether it's safe to have all this data, what are the risks associated with them. So I will start asking questions because we've understood that the legal aspect is very important. So I will start with Dr. Flogaitis.
Είπατε ήδη στην πρώτη τοποθέτησή σας.
In your first statement, you did talk about the framework a little bit. Can you please, very briefly, talk about the agri-food sector and data? Are we ready? Is the legal framework ready? Who is legally responsible? I'm talking about government organizations or businesses. Well, look, as I said before, legislation tries to keep up with technology, especially when it comes to our country. I have to remind you that the biggest problem is not the relationship between the agri-food sector and data protection and cybersecurity. Agricultural production itself is a problem. Is there any agricultural production to protect? So we have to start talking about agricultural production besides state and EU aids and subsidies. Because in Greece, this entire discussion revolves around subsidies, maybe for the entire Europe, not only Greece. That's a huge problem. So as I was preparing to be here today, I thought that I have to say this, maybe for the entire Europe, but particularly for us. Let's consider this. Is there any agricultural production to be protected? It seems to me that no, we might not have this. But of course, protection today is achieved through measures that come from the previous generation of measures and instruments. Now we're in the process of developing new tools that will help us protect from the risks of advanced technologies. But let me say again that it would be better if we had something to protect. It seems that we do. No, we don't. Maybe not as we would like to have it. Well, let me be clear. The entire EU agricultural policy that we have fully adopted is how the primary sector will be quiet enough in order to keep farmers from creating trouble. We are a subsidized economy, especially when it comes to the primary sector. Their livelihood is all about subsidies, and there is a constant fight on whether aids and subsidies have been fairly distributed. Is this healthy? No, I don't think so. I know it's not the job of legal expert to say this, but somebody has had to do that. The legal aspect. Indeed, our society does its best in order to meet current needs, but we need fast adjustment to current circumstances. But it's hard to keep up. I will agree with what you've said about subsidies, but even the problem of subsidies was created because of the integrity of data that were used. While what I am saying is that it's impossible for the primary sector to be based on subsidies and on aids. I don't know whether this is possible. This policy that we give aids to our farmers to have an income at the end of the year, whether they produce or whether they not produce, is not a healthy policy. Do you believe that if this stops, maybe we won't have any primary production as well at all? This didn't start from Greece, it started from France. So we cannot, I believe, get away at all with subsidies. It's a very deep-rooted problem in the EU. And the problem of the EU is, of course, how to ensure safety of the goods produced. But let's not forget that the European Union should also produce something to protect a high-quality product, a competitive good, and stop supporting the primary sector in order to just ensure the livelihoods of farmer families. Thank you.
Και θα απευθυνθώ στον Dr. Lappa.
Now, Mr. Lappas, you talked about the European Initiative Lions. In this geopolitical environment, which is quite uncertain, how does digital sovereignty and AI-enabled systems can fortify the supply chain and all these geopolitical shocks? Thank you for your question. I will try to describe this as simple as possible because we don't have a lot of time. Is the microphone okay? Can you hear me? No, it's... So yes, thank you for the question. I would like to put it simply by discussing some different aspects of the subject. There is this regulatory framework about AI, the AI Acts. It's an initiative at a European level. And then we have data, which are the primary data that have not been managed yet. We have algorithms, technologies, and we end with systems. This is the pyramid, let's say, of things, how things go. So the regulatory framework, AI Act, it only says three different things. The algorithms that we're using, if they can interpret the data in a right way. On the other hand, can I trust the system, of course? So the other part, one part is explainability. And the third thing is whether these algorithms are fair. The black boxes, the systems that make decisions, are they fair when they are, when money, for example, is given to the primary sector? Have these subsidies been given at a regional level based on the appropriate needs? So these algorithms, how are they designed? Now, when we talk about the alliance, we focus on food product passports. It was discussed before. This is the final product that ends on the shelf. And we should find the history through traceability, as we discussed. There are a lot of technologies and a lot of initiatives that do that, talk about the data. One part is a technology that has been used a lot, blockchain, which practically what we're trying to do is the supply chain is a chain with a lot of nodes. And there are a lot of people that take part in the supply chain that give So what we want to do is to create an environment of trust among all those people in the supply chain. So AI will make sure that this information that is input has not been altered. Let's say that a producer, for example, inputs a piece of information, and then when it comes to sale, this information has remained the same. I need to make sure that this information has remained the same and has not changed. This technology can help us with that. Another initiative are the data spaces, which are very modern now, actually. Data spaces try to safeguard a trust environment, but going back to the first question that you did to me, is that the technology is already there. We're not discovering it right now. The thing is how to use it. So how do we go from the theory to the applied research? This happens with interfaces, some KPIs that we're practically trying to put together this knowledge in a way that can be used easily by the users. So data spaces, well, we don't have a lot of time, so you should conclude. So data belong to the people that produce them. And practically, the person that produce them are the ones to decide which interfaces they will activate. And by closing, when it comes to the algorithms, let me say that they're based on scientific data and analytical tools. What really matters is that if we take a real problem that we want to solve and simplify it, it can be more controlled. But essentially, the problem will not be solved in the real world. The complexity of the algorithm will grow. So we're talking about approaches, not real methods. Thank you. And we talked a bit about platforms. I think that gives me a good segue to go to the professor, Mr. Demestichas. We talked about ecosystems. And in the framework of this data sharing, who owns data, after all? The data of a field, for example, and how can we be sure of trust? Thank you for your question. Yes, this is a very important issue, of course, and I will be quite clear, because the farmer's data belong to the producer. So after that, the role of a data hub is not just to take data but to create an environment in which the producer can choose whether they want to share this information. So trust, when it comes to those ecosystems, is built on three important parts. One is transparency. Who will use this data and for what purpose? Second is control, meaning that the user should give information and also recall the information. And third, to have a clear gain for the person that shares the data, meaning a farmer can share the data with a service provider, for example, or a research team with quite clear terms and receive the analysis that will help him to make their own decisions. At the European level, we already see these types of approaches, which are based in this reasoning of trust. So the data belongs to the producer, and the challenge is to create this trust, reciprocal trust, so that the data can be used safely and clearly. So, in order to build this trust, an NGO, for example, could play an important role, such as the Agricultural University of Athens, in collaboration with other academic institutions. Yes, of course, this was very interesting, and I'm sure that we're going to deal with that at some point in the future. And I will proceed with Mr. Chatzipapadopoulos, because we talked about the Smart Agora and the production of data, which is quite interesting. How does Smart Agro Hub will secure the privacy of the data? How can you gain the trust of the system?
First of all, as a company that's engaged widely in Europe, we meet all conditions, all GDPR conditions when it comes to personal data management of the platform users. And we are ISO certified when it comes to our information system security. So we are protected against malicious acts. But I think that in a platform such as ours, what's important in relation to data is to recognize and manage the nature of different data categories. First of all, we also manage open data, satellite data, that can allow you to even look at the field of the farmer. So even though it's the property of a natural person, these are considered to be open data. And sometimes it might be proprietary data, meaning from a satellite whose data are not open, you have to purchase them. These data are not personal data, even though they have a proprietor, an owner, the company which has invested to create this satellite. Then we manage farmers' personal data because they enter in our platform as users, they connect to it, so we receive their personal data and we manage them appropriately. Then we have environmental data that might come from farmers themselves, which are not considered to be personal data. So they don't require this specific type of handling. Nevertheless, their owner is a farmer, so you cannot market them, you cannot trade them. So you have to get the consent of the legal owner of the data, meaning the farmer. So when you manage data, you have to take into account all these different types of data. Sometimes, quite often, in fact, we have AI data that are trained based on real-world data. And these large AI companies never asked anybody for their consent to use their data. Anyway, smaller players have to be more compliant, usually. So we're very cautious, very careful about the data we use to train our models. And finally, let me say that farmers are not that sensitive to sharing their data because they understand that once they do it, they get a benefit from it. And we're not talking about sensitive data, but data related to their work. Thank you very much. Let's move to the last question of the second round of questions to Professor Thomaidis. We've talked a lot about data. You talked about analytics, molecular and chemical techniques, which is an important plus in this conversation. We've talked about geopolitical turmoils, which can lead to increased cases of adulteration. How can your early warning systems be used to protect public health? Well, basically, in times of crisis, when there are regional conflicts and natural disasters at the same time, the need for in situ analytic techniques that can give us the right information both in terms of safety and authenticity, the lack of adulteration. Let me give you an example. Based on our multiple research in large ecosystems in the Black Sea recently, there was a huge disaster. The barrier at Kharkovo was hit, and many wastewater and water destroyed a lot of crops. Projects to monitor this data, and we found out that these extra elements were drugs from human activity. So huge residues of pesticides were found, plus pesticides from the explosions, which means that the entire landscape of pollution and contamination changed in the area. So what do we need? We need early warnings, but also methods that can distinguish between the various types of contamination. Unfortunately, right now, this isn't the case with our in situ instruments. At the same time, we engage in mass spectrometry with, it's called DAT, direct analysis in real time. And such type of analysis can be used to detect adulteration in olive oil, and the entire process takes a single minute to do that. Also, we have sticks that can detect DNA, RNA, the ones used during the pandemic as well. So such type of analysis are very useful. So we need in situ analysis with high distinction analysis. We've still 15 minutes to go. So very briefly, I would like to welcome a final statement from all of you in this last question. If you could decide and impose a single action tomorrow morning, let's say that you are the policymaker, or you can impose a single measure to farmers and companies in order to digitally secure the agri-food supply chain against geopolitical shocks, what would you do? Again, I will start with Professor Flogaitis. Very briefly, 1 moment each. What would you do tomorrow morning to ensure security against geopolitical shocks? I would enhance the existing product certification structures, but I would truly enhance them and strengthen them. There is no other way to do it. That's the only way. And I want to say something, if you give me half a minute. It's relative to what I said before. In Italy, there is a company called Bonifiche Ferraresi. You can Google it. It is a large company, for an agribusiness company with its own fields. It has been supported by the Italian state to purchase fields in Libya, Morocco, and Ethiopia. It has its own production, its own research, and now the company also provides master's trainings in agribusiness. So I ask, why do you go in Ethiopia and not Greece, where fields are left behind? And the answer is, you're not interested in that. You're only interested in tourism. And I said, you're wrong. I didn't manage to persuade them. So what's my point? Indeed, they need this discussion we're having. Can we establish such companies in Greece? Then we will be truly talking about agribusiness. Anyway, I'm saying this because it truly hurts me. It truly hurts me when I see the primary sector completely abandoned. We shouldn't only care about a small producer that will produce a ton of olive oil and then sell it to the Italians and they will sell it as Italian olive oil. If we enhance the existing structure in Greece quickly and seriously, then I will be more than happy. So certification, okay, let's move to Professor Thomaidis. A single action that you could impose tomorrow morning to protect against geopolitical shocks. Well, I've already mentioned it, and it was mentioned by Professor Flogaitis as well. We need, in my opinion, very quickly, a national authenticity center, as the ones established in other countries, with a strong databases, at least when it comes to top priority products for our country: olive oil, feta cheese, honey, wine. Professor Demestichas, I would choose to encourage or introduce a framework for safe and interoperable exchange of agricultural data. This is the way to turn them into a strategic asset, as Mr. Lappas said before. Dr. Lappas. So I would suggest a national observatory of prices in the wider sense, in the general sense, and training center at the same time, focusing on utilizing generative AI and traditional AI, because traditional AI solves the problem and Gen AI generates text. So we need systems that we can train with our own data to turn them into strategic assets. And a last word by Mr. Chatzipapadopoulos. Everything said before, and I will build on what Mr. Thomaidis said. We don't only need a national authenticity center, but also a national traceability system and a network of European traceability systems that would ensure their interoperability. And of course, certification systems can be used at the same time. So we need a traceability network, a field passport, let's say, such as Farm Week or other similar initiatives. I will also keep the word training, because any investment in training will be valuable. That's my personal opinion. And of course, provided that there is still primary sector. Well, thank you very much for this exceptional panel. Where is Mr. Balakakis? He should conclude the session. Are there any questions from the audience? Yes, please.
Περάσουμε.
Αυτά τα φώτα είναι τρομερά.
Έχετε το μικρόφωνο. Ναι.
Do you have the microphone? My name is Zacharis Yannis. I am now working in the agricultural sector, but I used to be in the banking sector from the Agricultural Bank of Greece, the Pankritia Bank. Now, I would like a mention, well, taking into account, of course, the fact that in the last years we have been talking about the Mercosur agreements between the European Community and the Mercosur countries, which has to do with non-imposition of tariffs, thus saving more than 4 billion euros per year in the European Union. Now, we've heard a lot of negations, and I would like each of the speakers to give me their opinion whether these reservations are strong enough, maybe that we should have extra measures, by taking into account that there is, of course, a food security issue in Europe and many products are not enough. I think, Mr. Flogaitis, that you have something to discuss. Well, I haven't read the agreements. A lot of politicians give their opinion, but I cannot give you an answer because I have not read the agreement, and it's something that I should do because it's useful for all of us to understand, and myself included, the dimensions of the agreement, but I don't know them. I'm sorry. I can share my opinion, my 2 cents. That this agreement is coming at a moment when Europe is under pressure to regain some sort of food security and also to sell their products somewhere else. And under this sense, and under the Trump administration now, it's happening quickly. And right now, you should take a step back to see the relations that Europe has with this country. The relation is the following. 50% or 60% of the chemicals that are being produced in Greece but are forbidden in the European Union are exported to the Mercosur countries. And they use them because they are allowed there. Now, this is something that, of course, is good for the European economy and the chemical industry of specific countries. Now, let's talk about imports. Obviously, imports will increase. I remember that I always seeing lemons from Argentina at the supermarket. Now, the thing is that this agreement obviously will increase our imports flow. So we're talking about institutional protection, meaning that we should have a lot of controls. What about traceability? We should talk about traceability and support that, and mostly control, actually. If we want to protect the products, well, some people are angry, and they rightfully so, due to the increased cost. So the European Union should protect the agricultural production, and at the end of the day, we have the consumer that will have to choose the products that they want to purchase. So we need institutional assistance, more checkpoints, more controls, more measures, if, of course, this is chosen as a policy. And all the member states should collaborate. Unfortunately, my experience says that not all countries collaborate. There are some countries that, despite the fact that they have a clear European direction, they do not, for their own reasons, national reasons. Any other comments? Well, I'm not a legal expert, and I haven't read the entire agreement. But we are discussing all those years along with research laboratories, companies to give solutions about traceability. And we have not yet implemented traceability for our own products. We do not have the information for our own products. So how easy it is to have information about other people's products? And I'm sorry, but the sound is very bad because the other speakers are speaking simultaneously. So after that, we have not yet solved the first problem. So any other questions? Cool. So thank you. Hello. A comment about Mercosur, because I was at the previous panel and I was asked the same questions. Mercosur was signed by an institution of the European Union, which is the Commission, the European Commission, but it was sent back by the European Parliament. So right now, there is a debate between these two institutions, and it's really important to take a note of that, because not all institutions agree. And we should see that this agreement was signed by the appointed members, but was rejected by the elected members. My question is for Mr. Flogaitis. You said that subsidies cannot define the agricultural production. The other gap is more lax as the previous ones. And it doesn't have to do with government policies. What is the role of the government so that they can stop this spending, this wasteful spending of resources? And what we see in the CAP for the next years. Well, my name is Stefanos Fotis and I work for FAO. Thank you. Now, the thing is that it's not the notion of fair that shapes policies. It just makes the policies a system. And I believe, and maybe if I'm wrong, but because the policies of the European Union have left aside the primary sector, have left it a bit aside, and it gives subsidies because these people need to live somehow. And the framework of these policies are necessary, so this agreement might be necessary, the Mercosur agreement. If we cannot produce our own lettuce, or if we are not smart enough to produce our own lettuce, we need to buy it somewhere. Let me remind you that this has been done before by the European Union with fish cultures. We eat fish here in Greece. We have the best fish because we have an agreement with Africa, and we import African fish. The people living in Africa do not even eat these fish. They don't even know what they are. And we in Greece do not even know if the fish come from Senegal or Crete. But the thing is that we eat the fish and the Africans do not. They have accepted, for their own reasons, not to eat fish and export them. So what we're trying to do with Mercosur right now, it has been done before. But what I tried to say was that we should protect our agricultural production from the threats that exist. But personally, I don't want to miss the opportunity to say that I believe that all policies of the European Union that do not give true value to the primary sector are mistaken inherently. Because they exclude the simple European people, they exclude the land. I don't know why Europe has chosen to quit this path. Unfortunately, when it comes to my own personal voice, I protest. Any other question? No, I think we are done. I think we're done, we're covered, so thank you very much. Mr. Balakakis will close.
People say that usually the last panel is the worst one because people tend to leave. But I think that the last panels are very interesting because we have really nice discussions without any high tones. We have one of the best panels of the day. It was a really technical panel compared to the other ones who were more political and diplomatic. I would like to thank all of you. Today we are not going to talk about the conclusions. We will have the conclusions tomorrow at the end of the conference. There is a really nice lady at the back from the Agricultural University that keeps notes in order to allow us to present the conclusions tomorrow. So we would have half an hour to get a glass of wine, and we will be back tomorrow morning. Tomorrow it's not so much about diplomacy. We will talk about diplomacy as well, but it will be more technical. We will talk about value chains, responsible production, and responsible consumption. The synergy we've heard a lot talking about today between production, businesses. And thank you very much. Looking forward for tomorrow.